Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome to another review. Today I've got yet another brand new, all new tooled steam locomotive from Bachmann. Today's locomotive is yet another really special one. It's a first in model form, it's never been produced before. I don't think even the wheel configuration has ever been produced before, although maybe I'm wrong about that. And would you believe it, when the price for this loco was first announced, I actually made the decision that I was not going to buy it. I think I even said publicly, this loco is too expensive, I can't justify that amount of money. Well, that's not an easy thing to say because obviously next the comments start coming in, will you be reviewing this loco? Are you going to review it? Do you want me to tell those people no? And then of course I start thinking, well, is it really that useful to say no, I'm not going to review this loco because it's too expensive? Because the whole point of this channel is to help people decide which locos to buy and to show whether or not this or that loco is actually worth the money. So I did change my mind, thankfully, and here is the brand new Bachmann LNWR Precedent class, produced in partnership with Locomotion Models and Rails of Sheffield. So one version of the model is available from Locomotion, and that is the preserved example, and then the rest are available exclusively from Rails of Sheffield for £220, which is indeed the price. So when a locomotive costs £220, I've decided now that is all the more reason to get one and review it, because we need to know whether or not it's worth that amount of money. It's actually quite hard to conceive just how expensive this is. I mean, this is £220, that's the same price as the new Hornby Hush Hush. Now, the Hornby Hush Hush was terrible value for money, but at least it was a huge locomotive. This one is tiny, so just like the 812 from last time, very hard to imagine just how amazing this loco would have to be in order to be considered good value for money at £220. But as always, we're going to find out today. We're going to investigate every aspect of this, see whether it's worth the money, and hopefully we'll all enjoy seeing what is no doubt going to be a beautiful model. It's made by Bachmann, so you know it's going to look good. Let's find out whether it's worth the money. Here we go. Well, I have to say I am glad that I changed my mind and decided to buy one of these, because as much as I obviously hate buying brand new beautiful steam locomotives and then spending a whole day looking and talking about them, it does feel good to have taken one for the team, done the selfless thing and bought one of these to let you all know what it's like. So you're all welcome for that, no problem. I'm happy to do it. It is a bit of a bind, buying beautiful models to look at, but I'm happy to take one for the team, no problem. Anyway, so you don't even know what version, well, I guess you do because you've seen the introduction, but at the moment I have not seen this loco at all because the packaging design is slightly different, as you can see. All we've got is a line drawing on the front of the box, and so the full majesty of the loco itself is completely hidden from view. So I'm going to tease you a little bit. The first thing I'm going to do is show you the end of the box. So the version I've gone for is 35-162Z. It is the LNWR Improved Precedent Class number 5036 Novelty, that's the name of this one, in the LMS Crimson. I think this was my favourite of the liveries. There was a very elegant lined black one advertised, but I did go for the crimson in the end. And of course it is produced exclusively for Rails, and it has a 21-pin DCC decoder socket, although take that with a pinch of salt, because last time I read the information on the end of the box, I then opened the box and found out that that was a load of rubbish, and actually it's got a different decoder socket inside, but they couldn't reprint the packaging for some reason, and whatever. So maybe it does have a next generation 18-pin decoder inside it, I'm not entirely sure. Let me show you the back of the box then. So there is the history of the class, so pause and read that if you are interested, although I will give you a potted history of them in just a second. But now let's open up this box and take our first look at this no doubt beautiful but absurdly expensive locomotive. Let's take a look. Oh my word, there it is. Wow. £220, folks. I'm sorry if I'm going to let that price tag overshadow this review in any way, but I still can't quite believe that this little thing cost me the same as the Hush Hush. Whew, crazy stuff. but it does look gorgeous, doesn't it? And look at this wheel configuration. I'm pretty sure I've never reviewed one like this before. It's a 240. Yeah, it's even mind-boggling to look at that. So yeah, let's get this out and see what this is like. I've not found a slip of paper that says that the 21-pin DCC information was incorrect, so I think it's safe to assume that that is correct, and that's what we have in this model. But first, let's take a look at the owner's information and see what we've got here. So, as you'd probably expect, this does have a coreless motor. Not a problem at all. The 812 had a coreless motor and it didn't cause problems, except for the gearing, which caused the loco to run far too fast. So hopefully this won't be the same. Running in, that's all the same. Accessories, doesn't seem like there's that many accessories to fit this time. We've got a water scoop on the tender, a few buffer beam details, couplings, something on the top of the tender. Yeah, not an exhaustive list this time by the looks of things. Inside, lubrication, just shows you where to lubricate the axles. Changing the wheel set, so there is the traction tyre situation. I'm not entirely sure which set of wheels is fitted to the loco, but you have got a set of wheels with rubber tyres and another set without, so that you can interchange them depending on your preference. Which they actually decided to fit to the locos in the end, I'm not too sure, but I did do a poll, of course, to find out what you guys would prefer to be fitted, and 88% of the 3,500 people who answered the poll said that they would prefer metal tyres to be fitted from the factory. That was a long time ago, over a year ago I did that poll, so we'll see whether or not they actually decided to do that. Okay, DCC decoder and sound fitting. Well, they're showing opening up the tender, so that's a good sign. Hopefully the socket is in the tender, and yes, it does appear to be, so this is a more standard arrangement than the 812 was, which is good to see. And then on the back, not too much at all, so no mention, unless I've missed it, of a firebox glow. As a loco that's much more expensive than the 812, I would want it to have that feature and many more besides. So is this going to have it? Well, let's find out, shall we? Let's push the sleeve off and see what we've got. I can see the spare, well not the spare, the alternative I should say, driving wheels here. So yes, this is the traction tyre-less set of wheels, which means that the loco in the box, £220, does have rubber traction tyres. Not the choice I would have made, but hey, they made it, so that's what we're stuck with. And inside the bag there, you can see we have got a water scoop there, and also the screw-link couplings, which is a lovely thing to have. And we do have some etched nameplates in here, the novelty ones, made of metal, real nice finish to those. That's an awesome inclusion, which were not shown on the diagrams at least, but it does say that you can use a small dab of PVA-based glue, I think it said, to affix those nameplates if you wanted to. So yeah, that's a good quality inclusion, actually. Always pleased to see that. Right, let's have our first look at the LNWR, which is a slight mouthful, Precedent class locomotive. Here goes. Okay, so this loco, just like every other from Bachmann, more or less, has a superb finish. Look at that shine. Really, really love that. According to the marketing material I've read, this does have a lot of die-cast on it. Die-cast boiler, apparently, presumably a die-cast running plate as well. So as a small loco, it should have a decent amount of weight to it. So let's see. Oh, it certainly does. Wow. Yeah, it's shocking how heavy that is, actually. And you can tell just by touching the boiler and the running plate that they are all made of heavy die-cast metal, which of course is very, very important with a loco of this size. And speaking of the loco, wow, doesn't this look absolutely exquisite? You can absolutely see why this would be an expensive model, for sure, because the first thing I thought when I laid eyes on this was quality. It is a quality model by the looks of things. I'm not saying it's worth £220, I don't think any model this size ever should be, but it was, so there's no arguing with it. Like I say though, now that it's here, I can understand why this model would cost quite a lot to make, and it's obvious that a good amount of money has been spent on making this loco quality, perfecting the finish, getting the details right, and to an extent I would say that was absolutely worth it. One of the greatest finishes I've ever seen on a loco, and it's even better than the 812, I would say. It's even shinier, yet still not glossy and toy-like. So, a brief history on the Precedent class in real life, and then we will take a much closer look at this very beautiful loco. Okay, let's do it. The LNWR Improved Precedent was a relatively numerous class of 158 240 steam locomotive introduced in 1887 to the design of F.W. Webb. The 240 wheel configuration was by no means unusual during the pre-grouping era of British Railways, but it is extremely unusual in model form, as I say, this being the first in almost 500 locomotives that I've reviewed that's actually got it. Intended for express passenger work, they ran on 2 inside cylinders, they weighed 36 tonnes, boasted a tractive effort of around 48 kilonewtons, and an impressive top speed for the time. One example, I believe, even set a speed record when it averaged 67 miles per hour on a journey between Crewe and Carlisle. Less than half of the class passed into LMS ownership, the first withdrawals having taken place in 1905, so withdrawal was very early for this class. By the time grouping took place, the class was very outdated and pretty underpowered. The LMS, I think, classified it as a 1P, so not a powerful locomotive. And unusually, all examples were withdrawn before nationalisation. That's not something I normally say during a review. Usually a good number did survive, but not in this case. In fact, only one was preserved as part of the national collection, and though the real locomotive is not currently operating, a working model of this loco, number 790 Hardwick, has also been produced by Bachmann, and it is available from Locomotion Models. So there it is, up close and personal for you, the brand new Bachmann Precedent class. And this model is incredible. It is really genuinely incredible. Just look at it for a start. Look at the shape, look at the profile of it, look at the way it sits on the track. It's got a real presence to it, hasn't it? Obviously the quality is really high. I've looked really closely at this thing, haven't found any issues in the build quality or in the decoration or anything like that, so that's really good. However, while all of this is true, it is also the most expensive new locomotive I have ever bought and reviewed. I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that. If you can think of a more expensive one than £220, then let me know. This is the most expensive model that I can remember buying. It's a penny more than the Hush Hush, and I have to be honest and say, for the life of me, I cannot understand why it should be as expensive as it is. To me, it is just ludicrous. Yes, this is a great looking loco, but is it perfect? No. And frankly, I just feel that they've really taken advantage in charging £220 for this. And I really do feel sorry for anyone who has loved this enough to part with that amount of money just to get one. It really is a shame, isn't it? Not good at all for our hobby. Very small locos that are great quality and fantastic looking, but nevertheless small locomotives that are really no more complex than other models out there on the market that cost less. So to start with, I'll tell you the weight, which is actually really good. It weighs 245 grams, thanks to the die-cast running plate and the die-cast boiler. That does include the tender. It's actually more than the 812 that I looked at last time, so the loco is incredibly heavy. But unfortunately, a lot of the extra weight that has been gained by making this boiler die-cast has unfortunately been wasted because the loco is horribly balanced. One of the issues is that this front pony truck here does not have enough vertical movement in it. So if I just take the front pony wheels and lift them up even a fraction from the track, you can see those front driving wheels are lifted from the track, literally lifted off the track. So if your railway has a gradient or if the track isn't perfectly flat, then these front driving wheels are going to be lifted off the track from time to time, meaning that you are going to need those traction tyres. But it gets worse. Look at this. If I push the track backwards and pull the loco forwards so that it reaches the end of the track, and then watch this, I'll let the front pony wheels drop off the track. Look at that. So not only are the front pony wheels going to be lifting the drivers off the track, but we've actually got a significant amount of the loco's weight resting on those front wheels, to the point that without them, the driving wheels with the traction tyres are actually going to be lifted off the track completely. So yes, it's a heavy loco, but a lot of that weight, in fact, a really high proportion of the loco's weight, is resting on the front pony. Now, to be fair, the whole front pony thing might not have been an accident, because if you look at the loco from back here, obviously there is a lot of loco in front of the driving wheels. But then why make the smoke box die-cast? Why not have the smoke box plastic like it is on so many other locos with die-cast boilers? It just seems like there's far too much weight towards the front of the model when that might not have been entirely necessary. So I suspect that this is the reason that the traction tyres are fitted to this loco from the factory. It's going to be pretty useless without the traction tyres. That's going to be my guess, although we will try it later on. Not that it really matters, because Bachmann haven't included a tool for you to undo the crank pins in order to change the wheels. 220 quid, folks, no tool. The Dapol D-Class, that was overpriced, 200 quid. Dapol managed to provide a tool for doing that. Why didn't Bachmann? Why are we missing basics like that on a £220 locomotive? So we've got that. The livery is obviously beautiful, but it's less complex than the livery on the cheaper 812 class. Yes, it's got a die-cast boiler, and you might say that that is the reason for the ridiculous price, but no, all of these locomotives also had die-cast boilers, and even taking inflation into account, none of them cost anywhere near as much as this. The loco has no sprung buffers. No sprung buffers, that's another missing feature on the most expensive model I've ever bought. Sprung buffers, I admit, are useless. I like them, and a lot of other people like to see them as well, but it's not a huge deal that they're being missed off models. But on the most expensive model I've ever reviewed, what possible reason is there for A, not including them, or B, not lowering the price a little bit? There's no firebox glow, as far as I can tell, so we've got no lights on this model at all. Gorgeous as the model absolutely is, I really do feel badly ripped off with this. Really, really badly ripped off, worse than ever before. But from a visual point of view, the loco is absolutely stunning. And as I said earlier on, I can definitely see why this would be slightly more expensive than a Hornby locomotive, for instance, because the finish and the quality of this model is definitely higher than really anything Hornby have ever produced. Hornby's just an example. The same is true for most other manufacturers, really. So the finish, as always from Bachmann, is stunning, except even possibly slightly better. Look at the shine on the boiler there, really, really impressive. There isn't loads and loads of lining on the boiler, as was the case with the 812, but the lining that is here is done very, very accurately, as you might expect. And certainly around the underframe area there is plenty of lining, as you can see, which is all beautifully accurate, very, very nicely done. All the frames are lined, the front splasher there is lined, you've got the printed novelty nameplate, but don't forget, if you want to, you can add the metal etched one. You've got the LMS lettering on the side of the cab, as well as plenty of lining in that area as well. And even though there's no great complexity in the paintwork and decoration, notice we do have areas where lots of different colours join. I mean, you've got the black surrounding this area, the splashes also have black on them as well. The fact that there is no visible paint bleed or hiccups in the decoration is really quite impressive. All of the steps and such are lined, as you can see. The wheels are also nicely painted. They are die-cast wheels, by the way, on these. They're not just plastic centres. The front pony wheels, the Devil front pony wheels, they do look nice. You've got to give them that with the lining around them. The buffer beams are very elegantly painted as well. You've even got sort of rounded lining around the buffer housings, which is awesome. And the buffers themselves do look good, although obviously they are not sprung. The level of detail on the loco is very impressive as well, although it is a little bit too obvious that some components are separately fitted. The dome, for instance, is a big one, very, very noticeable join around that. The chimney is the same to a lesser extent, I would say, but there's still a visible join there. Same with the safety valve bonnet. Looking at photos of the real thing, those joins, while they might be present in some cases, they're far less noticeable than they are on here, unfortunately, which does make this £220 locomotive look a little bit toy-like in places. However, there are other details, such as the minute little taps, as you can see, the whistles, which are made of metal, and so they've got a real quality look to them. I do like that very, very much. So yeah, metal whistles, that's awesome. You've also got the valve gear between the frames. That is really quite a complex valve gear, quite a lot of moulded detail in that, and of course more than one colour used. It's not just painted into the red. You've got the various rods and stuff painted into a metallic sort of chrome or silver finish. Really quite complex, that. One of the most complex depictions of valve gear I've ever seen, and I think it was well worth it because it looks great. You've got handrails and pipework stretching across the length of the boiler, which all looks really good and fine and convincing. Same with the front of the smoke box door, which has the handrail separately fitted, as well as the smoke box door handle fitted onto there as well. Even the cylinders are nicely depicted just underneath the smoke box, and there's even a realistic gap in the running plate, which has also been modelled. I've got to just show you the running plate. Look at the shiny finish on that running plate. It really does look fantastic. And you have got a place to put lamps and such here on the running plate. I would hesitate to call those lamp irons because they don't really have the irons on, but there's definitely a hole there, so I don't know if you could possibly fit lamps to those if you wanted to. I would guess probably so. The front of the cab is very nicely presented as well. You've got glazed windows, obviously, flush glazing with the outside of the body, very subtle window frames surrounding them as well as a little bit of pipework around the front of the cab. And the cab interior is very impressive as well. As you can see, quite a lot of different components have been picked out. The water gauge appears to use a couple of different colours, and you've got turning wheels inside there, painted gauges, and a realistic looking firebox. Yes, we haven't got the firebox glow, and that is a nice sort of flashy feature that you'd normally expect on an expensive loco, but at least the firebox door is a little bit more realistic this way. It is worth noting that the windows are not individually glazed though, so you do have a very subtle but nevertheless visible length of transparent plastic which bridges between the two windows, which was painted over on the 812, and so it's a little bit confusing that this more expensive loco has not received the same treatment. Okay, so the loco is absolutely gorgeous. So now let's move on to the tender, which I really, really like. Again, the overall proportions and the profile of this tender are very unusual to me. I've never seen a tender quite like this. The body shape itself is lovely. I love the rounded edges around the back. They seem to stand out for some reason on this tender. The spacing of the wheels is a little bit irregular, so presumably the bulk of the water or the weight will be towards the back here, which sort of makes sense if you look in over the top. The coal load is removable on this tender, although the instructions say that this little assembly here has to be removed in order to do that, so I'm just going to trust that the coal is removable because I don't want to mess around with that too much. The underframe is very nicely produced, and also, just like the loco, the wheels have the lovely lining around them. And then the tender body itself is complete with the same very, very high quality finish, the same high quality decoration and lining, and even those numbers use multiple colours because they've got that sort of black drop shadow. So the tender is very, very complex, in terms of livery possibly even slightly more so than the locomotive. Around the back you've got what looks like a builder's plate. I can just about read that, LNWR number something, there's a number on there I think. It says 3069 I think. Should it say that number? I'm not entirely sure. Well, it's very small anyway, so it doesn't much matter. The tender fall plate is actually fixed to the tender on this loco and not the loco itself, so there it is. It is hinged as usual though, and it does seem to be quite floppy, so it tends to fall down and meet the loco without you really touching it, which I suppose is okay as long as it doesn't cause derailments. Little separately fitted and separately painted turning wheel there. And then around the back, a slightly different buffer design, although still not sprung, as you can see. Plenty of holes in the buffer beam to fit those extra details if you want. The screw link couplings are a really nice inclusion. I'm almost tempted to fit those myself. And then of course you've got the NEM tension lock couplings fitted to the back of the loco and also the front as well, although as always those are removable if you don't like the look of them. So there you have it, that was a close look at the LMS version of the new Bachmann Precedent class. Undeniably a fantastic locomotive. The level of detail is way up there with the very best of them, as is the decoration and the finish. Having said that, as a small locomotive, which is reasonably light on features in some areas, I just cannot understand that price. 150, 160 quid, yes, I could understand it because it's a high quality loco. 220, it's just ridiculous if you ask me. I can't believe that I have done it, but I'm glad that I have so that I can spread the word. Anyway, maybe this loco will surprise us all and run incredibly well. I think it will be okay with the traction tyres. I don't like traction tyres at all, but I think those flaws in the loco's balance will just about be masked while the traction tyres are fitted. I think the real problem might come when I swap out the traction tied wheel set for the plain metal one. I think this loco will really struggle then, even despite its weight. But I'm hoping to be proved wrong. Hopefully the performance will be faultless under all modes of operation, but there's only one way to find out. So there she is, the incredibly elegant new Bachmann Precedent class down onto the track. Now I've already filmed the performance test and I'm going to show you that in just a moment, so I won't give you any spoilers about that. Next I went on and did my analysis of the loco mechanism, and that's what I'm going to show you right now. Basically, the story is pretty much the same as the Bachmann 812, the Caledonian loco I looked at last time, where all of the basics are there. It ticks most of the boxes, but in some ways the design of the mechanism and the different features is pretty outdated. First of all then, pickups. Pickups is pretty good. We've got wiper pickups on all four of the driving wheels, although here we are in this bizarre situation of looking at a £220 locomotive that's got rubber traction tyres. So while all four drivers do have pickups, the ones with rubber tyres are basically not going to work. Plus 4 of the 6 tender wheels have the less reliable sort of axle-based pickups. And as you can see, the one on the left-hand side there has been fouled by the tender to loco wires. Why the plug is in the middle of the tender, I don't know. Why they haven't redesigned this outdated system, I also don't know, because yet again we've got no screw holding loco and tender together. They're easily able to uncouple, which puts the full force on the wires, of course. Yeah, it's just not a nice design. I don't know why they wouldn't fix that, to be honest. To remove the base keeper plate, there are a lot of screws, far too many screws, I would say, and also the instructions didn't mention that the brake rigging had to be disengaged in removing the base keeper plate, and if you're not aware of that, you could very easily damage that part, so that's unfortunate. But the base keeper plate is fully removable, and the pickups have spring-loaded contacts, which makes swapping the wheels or cleaning and servicing the loco quite nice and easy. Notice they've got a big weight on the bottom of the base keeper plate there to desperately improve the weight of the loco. Looking at the pony on the inside, it transpires that the pony can actually spring, but the amount of force required to actually make that spring is massive. It's way more than it's ever going to get in service, and so effectively it isn't sprung, although if you put loads of pressure on it, it does actually spring. So it's just a poor, negligent design there, unfortunately. There are proper bearings though on the driving wheels, and that's a good quality feature that you would certainly expect on a loco of this price. So the chassis itself is bare bones. There's very little on the loco chassis except for the motor and gear train. It's just a coreless motor without any flywheel. Appears to be the same coreless motor that Bachmann use on most of their modern locos, and if it is, then that's great, they're good. Pity about the lack of flywheel though. Now, to access the tender, the instructions say you may need to remove the rear tender wheels. Well, there's no may about it. The screws are underneath the wheels, so you have to remove the tender wheels. Why they put the screws there, I'm not too sure. They could have gone elsewhere. However, I did want to show the inside of the tender, and here it is. There is the 21-pin DCC decoder socket. This loco does not have the upgrade being Bachmann's word, not mine, to the next generation socket, so perhaps those technological developments didn't reach the precedent. Not sure why though at £220, but this is a 21-pin socket, that's the end of the matter, and there is a speaker located underneath this circuit board, so if you were to want DCC sound, then the loco is all ready to go. As for the gauging, it came in at 14.3mm, that's about the average across each of the axles, which is about fine. It's a little bit under gauge, but as always, that should allow the loco to handle curves without any problems. So that's it, that is the mechanism. Not the greatest we've ever seen in terms of features, especially given the fact that this is the most expensive loco I've ever reviewed, but the basics are there, which is the good news. Now then, let me jump back in time and show you what happened during that performance test. Okay, first ever test then, and I'm very curious to see how this runs. Remember, currently it does have the rubber traction tyres fitted as it came right out of the box. So let's give it its first little bit of juice then. Does the loco actually run? Let's find out. Not without a push. It's now at 50%. It sort of lurched forward and then stopped, so hopefully a little nudge will help it. Oh, there we go, it's off. Okay, so it's going. Notice, I don't actually know whether it's got a flywheel or not, but if it does, then it's not really doing its job, because watch. Wow, some realistic braking there. So of course, one of the many disadvantages of having traction tyres is the inability of a loco to wheel slip. It's not that bad without a load, obviously, but with a load, you'd expect a loco like this to wheel slip at times, but this is more or less prevented from doing so unless you hook it up to a ridiculous number of coaches. But besides that, the performance itself seems really good. It's not been running, I should say. It still needs its 30 minutes in each direction before it's at its best, presumably. But straight out of the box, it does seem to be reasonably smooth. Yeah, it's not bad, not bad. Let's see what the crawl is like, shall we? It started but then stalled. Don't forget, of course, the traction tyres also effectively take 2 of the loco's pickups out of play. So now we've only got 2, 4, 6. So we've basically got the pickup capability of an 060. Yeah, it is still going. Yeah, it's not really cogging. No, it's pretty good and slow, but not that consistent. It does seem to keep stopping. If I turn it up a bit more, we've got that. Now, by most standards, that is an awesome crawl. It does keep stopping though, but it might not do that after it's been running. Come on, no, let's give it a bit more. So the performance seems good, but it's not really the performance you'd expect from a 220-pound locomotive. At 220, I'd expect the performance to be significantly better than other locos, when frankly, again, I'll bring up the J27. Even that, I mean, is probably as good, if not slightly better than this, or it was, straight out of the box. Does keep stopping. Okay, so it's too early to draw any firm conclusions right now. At the moment, I'd say it's not quite as mind-blowingly good as it perhaps ought to be for £220, but we need to run it in now and see how it takes the layout, and then obviously after it's done its hour, we'll see if it's any better at the slow speeds. So I would call that a very smooth and consistent runner. Quite obviously though, yet again, it is far too fast. This is a very early steam locomotive, really, 1880s. The real things were not that fast. The Precedent that broke the speed record did so at 67 miles per hour, and I would say here at 50% speed, or at half speed on my controller, I would say we're probably at that speed at the very least, if not probably quite a lot higher. So I will do the speed trap test later on and let you know the scale speed. But yet again, it seems that the gearing is pretty unrealistic on this loco, and had they geared this loco down to run a little bit slower, then there might have been a bit more torque at the slow end, and the crawl might have been a little bit better. Performance though is good. It's not derailing, it is reasonably smooth, although that may change when I inevitably have to slow it down to make it a bit more realistic. So I'll check back in with you shortly, and fingers crossed it will be good news. Okay, we are back, folks, and wow, what a stop. Well, I can't say that I'm dreadfully impressed. I suppose the best I can say is that it stays on the track, and at half speed it is running constantly, doesn't slow down or anything. But yeah, it's not amazing. I mean, first of all, it's developed a squeak. Listen to this. So this is an hour's running, and it's squeaking like a little mouse, so that's not screaming quality. But the biggest issue is, yet again, it is far too fast. Even faster, in fact, than the Caledonian 812 from Bachmann. I suspect that they've used the same gearing in this loco, but of course the driving wheels are so much larger on this that it's even faster. So at half power on my controller, this is running at a scale speed of 83 miles per hour. I would say that's probably the maximum, even possibly slightly higher than the maximum. Remember, when this loco broke the speed record, it did so at 67 miles per hour, so 83 would have been a perfectly good top speed. However, at top speed on my controller, this does 154 miles per hour scale speed, which is obviously ridiculously too fast. Now that doesn't matter as long as the slow speeds are okay, but unfortunately you have to slow this down, at least on my setup, you have to slow this down so much to get it to run at a reasonable speed. There's very little torque left, and as you can see on this curve, for instance, it's got so little torque that it just slows right down to an almost stop on the curves. And you can see this, if I set this to 25 or 30, it's a bit of a ramble. Look at that, just no torque at all in there. And yeah, of course, that makes a lot of sense, because the controller, even if it's a variable voltage controller or a PWM controller, you've still got much less power going into the motor at that setting. So it's really important that locos do use the full spectrum of speed produced by a controller in order to work properly. I don't know what happened there, it just sort of cut out. Right, so is the crawl okay? Let's see, has it improved at all? Try and get it to crawl. How about that? So, yeah, it seems stable at that speed. It's not dreadfully slow. I will slow it down in a moment. Stable, I said. I just saw it sort of stop, but it doesn't seem to be permanently stalling at that speed. Yeah, so the slow speed performance is okay, but not great. There we go, it's stopped now. Let's give it a nudge. I mean, I would have expected a bit better from a 220 quid loco, to be honest, but it's not terrible or anything. A bit higher. Stopped again. I'm hoping that when I replace the wheel set, stopped again. I'm hoping that the extra pickups will hopefully improve this. Yeah, it's just not having it, is it? This is worse than it was when I did it off camera. And it's not yet reached the point. Okay, so yeah, it just keeps stopping. Oh. Okay, let's just give it a bit more, I guess. So yeah, the running in has far from helped this loco. It's made it squeak, and it's now not running quite as well. So maybe it just needs some lubrication. It did say that it had been factory lubricated, but yeah, it's not very happy. Anyway, the tractive effort is pretty good. I'll give you a final reading on that at the end, but I've already measured it with the traction tyres, and it was 0.5 newtons, which is quite a lot. So I've got just 5 LMS coaches. I don't think that's too much for the loco, at least with traction tyres. I think it should manage that. So let's go and couple up to those and do a few laps with them before I change the wheel set. God, look at that. It's limping badly. Right, go on then, let's see what happens. Let's not go at 50%, let's go at, let's say, 30. There we go. Listen to that noise. Has a bird infiltrated the loft? I'm a bit worried. So yeah, as expected, the curves are completely flooring it because it's got no torque. I'm running it at such low power to make the speed halfway realistic. It's just really bottoming out on the performance. Ooh. Hopefully now that it's on the straight, it will be a bit better. When I do swap the wheels out, I will lubricate them. I will put some lubrication on the gears and the axles and such. Shouldn't have to, of course, but I think the squeaking is telling me that it needs it. But I'm not doing it now because I have to film it as it comes right out of the box. Obviously, if I turn the controller up, if I increase the power going to the loco, then those torque issues will definitely go away. But then, of course, the loco runs far, far too fast, and it's just not pleasurable, to me at least, seeing a loco go as quick as that. I mean, at £220, this is not a kid's toy. They shouldn't be pocket rockets. They shouldn't be flying along like rockets. This sort of speed would do it for me. You know, if that was 50% speed and it went quite a bit faster at full speed, I would be happy. So yet again, we've got a loco that is more or less twice as fast as it ought to be, and its performance is suffering as a result. Yeah, it's just such a pity that it doesn't seem fit for its intended purpose, and that is not ideal. Right, so I'm going to do the surgery in just a moment, but first of all, let's show you that exact section of track again at a higher speed, just to see whether the torque issues go away. I think they should do. Okay, so here we are at 40, speed 40 out of 100. I mean, that looks pretty fast to me, I would say, just to put that into perspective, but yes, torque problems have disappeared. Right, let's try it without the rubber traction tyres. So, as I noted earlier on, the tool that you need to undo and retighten the crank pins on this loco was not included. And despite some of the marketing video material for this loco saying that the process of swapping the axles could be undertaken very easily, the truth is that you actually can't undertake it without specialist equipment. Fortunately, I do have a 2.5mm nut spinner, so I will be able to undertake this, and I'll show you how it goes. But it's far from very easy, that's for sure. So, first job, remove the base keeper plate. Okay, the screws are out, so now I have to disengage this rigging, which keeps re-engaging. Then we can pull the assembly out. Make sure those pony wheels don't go missing. Now, I would usually do this with the wheels in situ, but I'm really conscious of the bodywork being so beautiful on this loco, so I don't want to risk damaging it. And also I'd have to turn the wheels round in order to do that. So I'm going to pull the wheel sets out like that. And then I'm going to use my 2.5mm nut spinner, making sure I undo the right crank pins. And hopefully this one will fit. Yes, it seems to. And I can unscrew the crank pin. Now, I don't think there are spare crank pins. Was it the Dapol D-Class that had spares? Can't remember now, but I haven't seen any spares for this one. So yeah, I've got to be careful. Something weird going on with the screw thread. There's all like looks like white corrosion inside there. Great. So I might not be able to ever put these axles back on again. But I'm not bothered. I don't like traction tyres. Bag with the new axle inside. This is not a resealable bag, by the way, so once it's open, you've got to be careful not to lose all the other bits. Okay, and then you just have to make sure you're doing this on the right side. And then the worst job is getting the new wheel threaded. But that was remarkably simple. Okay, nice and tight, not too tight, just sort of finger tight is normally enough. And now you just repeat the first steps of the process, but in reverse. So I'll put this all back together. Of course, reassembly is a little bit more fiddly because you've now got to make sure the bearings go into the right position, but it's not too much of a big faff, and eventually you'll be able to get them in. They're in place, so my Precedent is now officially traction tireless. So I'll put the base keeper back on, and then we'll take it onto the track and try it. Okay, I'm not sure why I'm putting this back on the track like it's for the first time, because I have just tested it. It does still work, and actually the pulling power without the traction tyres is nowhere near as bad as you might expect. I measured 0.24 newtons without the traction tyres, which is 17 coaches still. Now that is the same as the Hornby J36, which is not that bad. It's not bad at all. So how is the performance now? I did forget to lubricate it, by the way. I said I was going to. I didn't, so that's a job for next time, although it isn't squeaking anymore. So was the rubber causing it to squeak? I don't know. Anyway, how is the slow speed performance now? Let's see. A bit more. Has it stalled? I can't tell if it's stalled. I think it had. A bit more. So obviously it's still going to have very little torque at the slow speeds. Whoa, no, it just went. Let's try it again. There you go. So it's similar, I would say. Is it much improved? Well, we need to see if it cuts out as much. It shouldn't do, actually, because obviously now it's got more pickups without the rubber traction tyres. Yeah, it's not picking out, it's not cutting out quite as much, is it? I think it has now, though. Or is it a pickup thing? No, I think it's a torque thing, because when I turn it up, it can rescue itself. So, yeah, it really is just the gearing and the torque. If they'd fixed that... I mean, why didn't they... Do they not test these things? Couldn't anyone tell that this was too fast? I don't know. How is the torque without the traction tyres? Let's set it to about 25 again. Yeah, not so bad. It does keep cutting out, though. I don't know. Better tender pickups were needed as well. Better tender pickups and pickups on all of the tender wheels. That would have been good as well. But yeah, it does seem, there seems to be something binding mechanically. I'm not sure what. But you can sort of see it every now and again. but pulling power is okay. So let's go and couple up to those same coaches again and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so I think we'll accelerate it quite suddenly. Let's ram it up to 30, which doesn't sound much at all, but for this loco it is. Now did you get any glorious wheel slip there? I hope so. Okay, so on the middle line I've got basically the theme of today's session is going to be LMS Crimson locos. So I've got the LNWR Class 5, which is actually, I mean, if Bachmann pulled the design off for this, then the Precedent should have been easy, right? Because it's got the same number of driving wheels, except this one's got more non-driven axles than the Precedent. But anyway, whatever, off it goes. And then on the inside line, we've got another loco, which is the 1P, and it's, I think this is in the Midland livery, but it's the same sort of livery anyway. Now this has a cordless motor, and this one is also pretty fast. Look at that. It's not as fast, I don't think. Maybe it's got smaller driving wheels. Still pretty fast. I can't remember if I picked up on that in the review, but I should have done. But no, this one, it's not quite as egregious, but if I set it to 40, it's still a fair speed. So there are things I can look at to improve the performance, and I've no doubt that at least some of them will be viable. None of this is appropriate during a review, by the way, but I will look into this afterwards. So yeah, the front pony I could look at. At least one of the tender pickups isn't making proper contact because of the wires, so maybe I could look into that. There does seem to be another pickup issue besides that, so if I look at the loco driving wheels, I could maybe adjust those pickups to improve the contact between those pickups and the wheels, and then maybe it would be a better runner. I think it does need some lubrication. It shouldn't do because it's brand new and only just been released, but I think some lubrication would definitely improve the running of this as well. And I will feed back to you on this in a future video when this loco crops up again. Maybe even in the next news video if the result is newsworthy. But right now the performance is okay. We've seen much better, I think, and for £220, you know, it's not really performing adequately, I would say. But the conclusion is very much similar to the 812 video. If you're in the market for a decent loco that looks good and runs well, then I wouldn't recommend this because, as I said in the last review, you can get better locos than this for less money. That said, if you are in the market for a Precedent and that's all you want, and you're happy with this loco and its features, and you understand that you're not really getting your money's worth in handing over 220 quid for this thing, if all of that is okay with you and you still want one, then sure, I can recommend this. There's nothing horribly wrong with it. It is well designed for the most part. I can't see it breaking down completely on me. I think the running issues are reasonably minor, although I will have to feed back to you on that. But yeah, overall, if you really want a Precedent and you're happy with the price, then sure, I could recommend it. Let's have some ratings then for the new Bachmann Precedent class. So, level of detail, I mean, aspects of this model are absolutely amazing, but I've come to the decision to give it 4.5 on level of detail, which I actually think is quite generous, because given the price, this could have had the firebox glow, it could have had sprung buffers, etc. It was missing those features, so I've knocked it down a little bit. But to be perfectly honest, the finishing on this loco, the level of detail, the cab detail, the livery, I think all of those definitely outweigh the one or two missing features on the level of detail. So I think 4.5 star is definitely reasonable. Performance, I was umming and ahhing about this, but I've decided to give it 3 star overall. The crawl is okay, but we've seen much better, I think. It just keeps cutting out. A, possibly because there are too few pickups on this loco, and B, because there's just very little torque there at the slow speed because of that gearing. And similarly, even at the slightly higher speeds, there is a bit of a torque issue there, because to get this to run realistically, you've got to turn the controller right down. And of course, at 50% speed and above, the loco just looks far too fast to be realistic. So yeah, again, the gearing has let the loco down, and actually the knock-on effects from that slight gearing issue are quite numerous. So performance not amazing, does seem to cut out a little bit too often for my liking, but it does seem to run smoothly at the higher speeds. The pulling power is absolutely fine. With the traction tyre fitted, this can haul 30 coaches on straight and level track, according to my little algorithm, and removing the traction tyres, you only lose about 13 coaches from that number. It can still haul 17 without the traction tyres, which I think is really quite good. Could have been even better if the front pony design was a little bit better, but overall that is not too shabby at all. Why they didn't give you the traction tyres as an optional extra, I don't know, because the people have spoken and the loco cuts out far more often with those traction tyres fitted. So yeah, they should have just listened to us on that one. Okay, mechanism, mechanically on the whole this is better than the 812, but it's still got that outdated drawbar, no flywheel on the motor, and the front pony issue, which turns out not to be a massive problem in practice, but the pulling power of the loco would almost certainly have been better had less weight been placed over that front pony. So while the front pony issue should make this a worse mechanism than the 812, the Precedent does beat it in some areas. For instance, you no longer have to disassemble the locomotive to access the DCC socket, and also you can easily remove the base keeper plate on this, unlike the 812 which was hardwired. So overall I think it swings and roundabouts about the same as the 812. Quality though, actual build quality, cannot fault it. Decoration perfect, no glue visible. Perhaps the fit of some of the parts could have been a little bit better, but I don't think that's egregious enough to knock down the score. Let's see, lots of die-cast. You've got the die-cast boiler, die-cast running plate, so you've got a really heavy loco for its size. I think the quality is pretty darn good. Yeah, 5-star. Value for money though, I mean, this is £20 more expensive than the 812, and it's got significantly fewer features. This is the most expensive locomotive I've ever purchased, £220. It's a tiny little loco, it's beautifully detailed, it's high quality, but it's not the greatest locomotive I've ever purchased by a country mile, and it should have been for that price. So yeah, terrible, terrible value for money, unfortunately. Yes, it's got some really lovely qualities, and yes, I can totally understand why this loco would be more expensive than some others, but let's be honest here, it's not worth £220. Not in my opinion. Maybe if you think it is worth that, then absolutely fine, but in my opinion, it is a rip-off at £220. Overall then, that is a decent score of 7.14 out of 10. Better value would have made this way, way better in terms of score, but into the logbook it goes, and it is indeed in first place, just beating the Caledonian 812. Well folks, thank you so much for joining me for yet another review. To be honest with you, this got a higher score than the 812 did, but I have to say I enjoyed the 812 more than this. So yeah, maybe there's a flaw in my rating system. But according to the rating system, this is the slightly better loco. In terms of my honest opinion, I'm not sure that it is. I think the 812 was far less trouble than this one was. But either way, they're both really lovely models. The Precedent is beautiful, yet again one of the most beautiful locos I've ever reviewed, and to argue otherwise would just be disingenuous. So yeah, absolutely gorgeous, one of Bachmann's best looking locos yet again. Performance lets it down a little bit, but more than anything else it is the value for money that lets it down. But this is all just my opinion. You might disagree with me, you might say that I'm wrong, so if you do, do comment down below and let me know what your thoughts on this are. If you've got one, what was the performance like? Did you try without the traction tyres? Did you notice any difference? Do let me know, I'd be very interested to hear. But for now, thank you for watching, and I will see you for another video very, very soon. Alright, cheers folks, see you on the next one.